When I was around 9, my family and I moved into a house out of pure desperation and financial struggles. That house was dark. Doesn't matter if every single light was turned on, it was like something sucked the light out of the entire house. Even in the daytime, not much sunlight got in. It started off with seeing these shadow-like figures out of the corner of our eyes. I'd see it sort of flash past me while watching TV. I'd even turn the TV off, and it'll happen again. These shadow things were always really tall and looked like black smoke. Also, the clocks in every room would stop working, and they'd all stop at around 3 a.m. I am not kidding when I say this, because my first thought was, I think I saw this in a horror movie once. We'd change the batteries, even buy new clocks, nothing worked. Eventually, we just took them all down. We lived in this house for 5 years, and couldn't afford to move anywhere else. When we were finally able to move out, we were all sleeping in the same room as my parents, because of the creepy stuff that would happen. Whatever these entities were, they affected our animals too. Our dogs and cat became super aggressive. To the point where we wouldn't go outside anymore, because the dogs would start growling. Our cat would attack people randomly and brutally scratch them. The person they affected most was my mom. She'd often wake up with multiple bruises on her body. She'd say she feels like someone's choking her in her sleep and would have awful dreams. My dad never believed her. One day I was sitting with our cat in the living room. It was sleeping on my lap, and my mom screamed my name. I went to her room and asked what was wrong, and she said, "Take that damn cat out of the room, it keeps walking all over me." I told her the cat is sleeping in the living room. She told me she swears that the cat was in her room, she wasn't sleeping and had been playing on her phone. She saw the silhouette of the cat jump onto the bed and start walking on her body. She felt its paws and saw its shadow, but not the actual cat. The next day, my dad had been working night shift, so mom was sleeping alone. She woke up in shock, calling for my dad. When I asked what happened, she asked if my dad was home, and I said no. She said she heard a man walk into the room, heard the heavy footsteps, so she opened her eyes and again just saw a shadowy silhouette. This figure then sat down beside her on the bed. She was so shaken up because she said she felt the weight of someone sitting next to her, but she reached for it and nothing was there. That's when the weight on her side of the bed abruptly lifted. Experiences I had personally were small things like stuff falling down, feeling watched, also having major aggression and anger issues suddenly. I'd fight with my siblings for absolutely no reason and wanted to be alone a lot. There was a time when I was around 11 that my parents left me home alone. I said I didn't want to go with them and they said fine. I had a phone, which I was told to keep on loud at all times in case they wanted to get a hold of me. After they left, I have zero recollection of what happened. I remember saying bye and closing the front door and nothing else. They left at around 3 in the afternoon. When I woke up it was pitch black outside. The house was completely dark, and because I knew what happens in the house I always kept every light on. I was laying on my bed on my stomach as if I'd passed out suddenly. I had like 20 missed calls from my parents asking if I'm okay. When I checked the time it was 8 p.m. Till this day, I have no idea what that was. The few times my siblings and I got along, I was taking a video of my sister while she was dancing and singing in my room. My room was super dark even with the light on, but I could see my sister and what was behind her clearly enough. The video was being taken from her knees up. She stood in front of a dark brown wardrobe. As she's moving around, I look at the bottom of the screen and see something moving. This shadowy thing lifts itself up to my sister's shoulders and then sort of slides back down back to the ground and out of view. No idea what that was. As a 12-year-old kid, I freaked out and deleted the video after watching it. The night before we left, we start speaking about all the freaky things that had been happening to us. We'd never actually sat down and talked about it, but eventually we did. After hearing our stories, my dad finally believed us, and just said, "Good thing we're moving then," and chuckled. The morning we left, our neighbor came to say goodbye. The neighbor was a pastor. He said goodbye, and then my dad sort of jokingly said, "Yeah, we're moving 'cause of all the ghosts," and the man's face turned serious, and he said to my dad, "Oh, you saw them too?" He then explained that every time he entered our house, he felt a dark presence. He said even before we moved in, he'd see things moving around in the house when he looked over. Apparently that house had been empty for like 10 years before we moved in. And since we moved out, no one has lasted more than 2 to 3 years before getting the hell out of there. This sounds like a movie or some made-up shit. But I promise you this happened. As a kid, I was forever traumatized.